You're watching Next Pitch, the student athlete playbook for parents raising tomorrow's athletes.
Hi, Anthony Leverett here, host of the Next Pitch podcast. And on behalf of my Emmy Award-winning producer, Jason Cardona, we are thrilled to have Kerry and Steve Boyle join us on the show today. They own a nonprofit organization called 241 Sports. It's all about putting the play back into sport and providing opportunities for young people all over the country. Really enjoyed my conversation with them. Hope you do as well. Hi, Anthony Leverett, host of the Next Pitch podcast. And on behalf of my Emmy Award-winning producer, Jason Cardona, we are thrilled to have Kerry and Steve Boyle with us today, founders of 241. And we are going to dive into a whole bunch of stuff with them. First of all, thank you both for joining us.
Of course. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, this is awesome. Thanks so much, Coach.
Yeah, Coach. So it's been a while since I get called that. But so you guys founded an organization. How long ago? What year was it? How long you been doing this? It's been a chunk of time, correct?
Yeah, it has. I had a whole full head of hair back when it started, I believe. But so when our now 29-year-old was trying out for the local travel soccer team, U8, I think it was, we got the call that she was the number one prospect. You know, as an 8-year-old, we were like, dude, she's nobody's prospect. Anyway, he goes on about this Brazilian style of play that she's going to fit into. And I said, well, look, my wife played lacrosse in college, and Atlanta's showing some interest in playing lacrosse. Can you tell us what the conflict will be like in the spring? And he goes radio silent on us, as if he's going to talk to the guy in the back of the car dealership, and comes back and says, we're no longer interested in your daughter. So went from number one prospect to no longer interested, because as an 8-year-old, she showed interest in lacrosse. So we came up with the tagline, life's too short for just one sport.
I love
Ran
it.
our first camp in 2009 just for girls. And yeah, we've been at it since. And, you know, nothing's a straight line in life, but here we are.
Yeah, I love that. The whole idea, and we'll just start there. The whole idea that kids are supposed to specialize at 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 years old is insane and bad for them. How do you deliver that message to parents about how important being a multi-sport athlete is in their development growing? Because the percentage of someone becoming a pro is so small, and there's so much more to learn than from just the skills that you get in the sport. What is your message to parents about being a multi-sport athlete?
I mean, I would just start with, we just decided we were going to try to infiltrate our community, right? And both of us were college athletes. Our daughters, we have 3 daughters, all of whom are very good athletes. So we kind of had a platform because people would listen to us. Again, I'm just talking about our community, because people are like, oh, wow, they played in college, Division I, and our kids were athletic. So we were able to get people's ear, right? And say, look, we both played lots of sports. Everyone we know who played college athletics, all our teammates, there was no specialization, right? So, and, you know, people listen to, you know, they did kind of listen. And then, you know, we kind of brought it to the next level, so to speak. But, you know, just modeling, I guess, that our own children were playing multi-sports, and, you know, telling our personal stories was how we started.
And I think with Kerry's point, when you have a platform, then you got to do something with it. And I think that's really, you know, we were able to all of a sudden, people started listening to, like, really, my kid doesn't have to play year round and they can still make the high school team. And this was insane, right? Like, you know, some of them were like, how do I go from the C team to the B team? You know, and then, like, first of all, why do we have C and B teams and all that stuff? So what we were able to sort of show as multi-sport coaches and parents who endorsed a multi-sport philosophy was our best athletes were our competitive kids, and our competitive kids were multi-sport athletes. Like, I often would say, like, you have your dancers, right? Your dancers are those who can juggle the ball 16 times and do a Maradona and a Cruyff, and, you know, they've got great little sort of ball handling tricks they can do in basketball or whatever. But we want that kid that they race to the sideline just to save a ball, even when they're up 17 points, and they're diving and they're laughing and they're having fun. Like all the multi-sport athletes, it was those kids that came from a multi-sport background. They just love to play. They love to compete. They love to have fun while they were doing it. Where these other specialists were like, it felt so much like a job. And we were trying to sort of show that to people. Like, look, bring some joy. Like our whole mantra now is let's put play back into sports. Because when you do that, then kids just get naturally better as a result.
Yeah, and I want to talk about that play part a bunch. But kind of drilling down on this topic, I'm a firm believer that sports teaches failure, and not just how to fail, but how to get yourself up from failing, go through a process, repeat that process, go compete again, knowing that you might not be perfect the next time you compete, and potentially failing again and putting yourself out there. And if you only play one sport, eventually you're not going to fail as much, and you're going to get good sooner. And being able to do that 4 or 5 different types of sports as a young person is really important. What do you guys think about that component of just specializing, being a part of so many different things?
I mean, I'll just give you the quick and sort of story and that popped into my head when you were saying that, is that you're absolutely right. Kids might accelerate their development, but when they do fail, we never hear from them again. And that's, see, for me, we try to cast a wide net. And a lot of times when we go to conferences and we talk about this, everyone's thinking sort of like upper middle class communities, right? Suburban communities, these where they have the travel teams and all that. But what they're not talking about is all those kids that we've lost from sport for the reasons we're describing: no longer fun, feels like work, failed for the first time, didn't know how to handle it, so they just quit. And then we got these other kids that don't have access. I'd want to talk about that at some point, but 100%, we got to give kids an opportunity to fail, but in a safe space. I mean,
Yes.
That's the other thing around, like you're going to lose sometimes. You're going to get dumped. You're going to lose your job. You're going to all of a sudden have a stock you bought crash. Like that's part of life. And sports is the safest and best way to teach that. And if we're losing kids from sports, then we've lost as adults in terms of being good educators.
And I would just add too, like kind of empathy when, we run a camp where kids are trying, in our parent pay camps, 3 different sports, right? So if someone's a travel soccer player, they're really, really good at soccer. Well, then they go to lacrosse and they're not that great at lacrosse. They've never really played lacrosse, but they now understand what it's like not to be the best on the field, right? Where in soccer, they are always the best. And then they get kind of frustrated with the kids that can't keep up or don't, get to that pass, that perfect pass that they gave their teammate. They understand what it's like actually not to be the best or to be learning something for the first time. And so there's this empathy for their teammates that they learn also from trying different sports, I think.
I love it. It's interesting. You said that I had a chance to interview Trevor Hoffman, Hall of Fame baseball player. And one of the things that he talked about too, and he was the first person, you're the second person that said it, was compassion and empathy for your teammates as a young person. And to hear that from, a Hall of Famer saying that he learned compassion and empathy from his youth sports experience it just bears out what you're saying. Statistically, what do the stats say about kids who stay in sports versus kids who don't play or drop out early? Success rates in high school, getting to college, going beyond and having success in whatever corporate America or whatever avenue they pursue.
Yeah, I mean, the better stats are on the women's side, that in terms of the amount of, sweet C-suite executives that make it to that highest
Easy
level.
for you to say.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That almost 98% came through a high school sport experience.
Say that again. So say that again. That is so incredible.
Yeah, that leaders, and we find it all the time as educators as well. When we go in to meet with a lot of our work is done at schools. Almost all the principals have some sort of sport background, right? Because that's why they value us. because they're like, these kids aren't getting exposed to what I was. So we find from a leadership standpoint that, and look, I wish I had exact numbers for you. It's a lot, right? And I think if you were to just sort of informally just ask people in leadership positions, was sport in any capacity part of your upbringing? Inevitably, the answer is yes. And then they start to get excited. And in many cases, they talk about not their coaches or the the wins and losses. They talk about stickball in the street and riding bikes with their friends and the bus rides home, like all the stuff that's relationship building, and that is, learning how to navigate conflict, dealing with bullies, like all the things that happen in sport. Like we do a lot around social emotional learning and leadership development. A lot of times we're just trying to get out of the way. We're trying to just provide opportunities for the kids to figure it out, because that's where leadership gets developed. Anyway, I can go on a tangent on it.
No,
I would say that an example came to my mind of a parent. I was an athletic director at a 6 through 12 prep school here in Hartford. And I remember a father, he was a CEO of one of the big, banks. And he's like, do you know anyone that's graduated recently that, it was a D1 athlete? I'm looking for, and I'm like, well, do you care what, do they need accounting? Like, what do they, he goes, I don't care. I don't care what they studied in college. I want a D1 athlete or just a college athlete, because I want to start there. And I can teach them what they need to know, because I know they're going to have the work ethic. They're going to be disciplined. They're going to, be there on time. They're going to, stay till it gets done. They're not going to be checking out at 5 o'clock. So, that's just an example that popped in my head.
No, I think it's a great one. And you don't have to be a Division I athlete. And I coach at the Division I level, so I have an affinity for Division I athletes as well. I'm married to one as well, so I really have an affinity towards Division I athletes. But even just high school sports, like getting through that, right? Like there is so much that gets learned from that journey of counting on somebody next to me, and even more important, knowing that they're counting on me, that accountability to do my job so that they can do theirs, so that we can have our best success as a group. And, that's in team sports. So much you can learn from individual sports as well. But those skills translate to corporate America. There is no question.
Yeah. And that's why I think this whole idea of casting a wide net is so important. Like if we're really like serious about developing good leaders, we got to give more leadership opportunity. And there's literally, like, we keep talking about test scores and about, like the best classroom for all this stuff is the sports field. I mean, I remember like in high school, if I didn't have sports to look forward to, I don't know what I would have done. I literally don't know what I would have done. It's like, I could not wait to get out there and be with the guys and an adult who I knew saw me in a different way. And then it allowed me to stay in school and to, do all the other stuff that's important. Like we have some kids that come to our programs in underserved and under-resourced communities. They live in homeless shelters, but they're coming to school now. They used to not come to school because for the first time in their life, they're feeling a connectedness to something that's different. And so we've got to look at it at all levels. We have to provide opportunities for kids to have sport-based play, because the learning, it's rapid. Like it happens so quickly. We see it like sometimes we'll go from one school and then we don't go back to that school for 3 weeks. And we're like, is that the same kid in 3 weeks?
Isn't that awesome?
You know what I mean? Yeah. And not just from athletic skills, but just how they greet you, right? And their level of confidence. Well, if you could do that at that age, think about what happens when you can get kids involved in sports in high school, and if God willing, in college, whether it's D1, D2, D3, club, whatever. Like you said, all those translatable skills are there.
Yeah, it's such a great point. So let's talk about the youth sports system, or lack thereof, in our country. What's broken? Let's start with what's broken, because I think it's important for people to hear this. When I was growing up, I played sports for my middle school teams. That's all I did. And I identified with, I played for Harbor Lights middle school basketball team, right? Like that was my team. And so that doesn't exist at a national level anymore because of funding. And so we have club sports that have taken over the world. And very many people that come into that environment are doing it to make money and aren't, in my opinion, qualified to be coaching, number one, well, maybe not number one. Number one, mentoring young people. Number two, coaching the sport that they're coaching. From your standpoint, being immersed in the world that you're in, what is this? What's broken with the system, and is it possible to fix it? Big question. I know.
Yeah, you give me an hour and I'll go. But if you want to start first, Karen, then I have some ideas.
I guess what initially it is the money, and that is heartbreaking to me because it creates even more haves and have-nots. I mean, the fact that you have to pay to play is just maybe at some level you do, but like kids should not at 8, their parents shouldn't be dishing out money for them to be able to just play, right? There should be free opportunities, good coaches in those free programs, which is not always the case. And I think it's the money. And I think that parents get sucked into it because of their own egos and, wanting their kids to be what they, deem successful. And our kids did play AAU and club lacrosse. We went down that road. But when I think back on how much time as a family we lost because Steve was taking one girl to AAU and I was taking another one to club lacrosse. And, I have a friend that says that club teams have ruined families, you know what I mean? And ruined the idea of family because everybody's running to all these different things and no one's just playing in the backyard with their kids, right? They're shuttling them around. So yeah. I don't have a solution, but
yeah, I mean, and we talk a lot about this, and certainly it is a broken system, and there's different cultural things that have happened over the past 20, 30 years to lead to that. It initially started because of the white van scare, right? That, you can't send your kid to the local park because the kidnapper is going to get them. I mean, that's ridiculous. The statistics on that I got way better chance of myself getting hit by the mail truck than that happening later today. It's just, but I get it. And that is a cultural phenomenon, especially it used to be just in suburban America. Well, now you drive anywhere in America, there's hardly anybody using our parks. Kids don't know how to self-organize. They don't know how to pick sides. They don't know how to be creative with space and equipment. God forbid there's 5 kids. What do we do with the odd number? Like we grew up, you just figure that out and you were just self-organizing all the time. And that's what we try to put back into a lot of our programming is teaching kids how to do it. First solution I have is let's make our schools our recreation centers, especially our elementary and middle schools, right? We keep building these indoor sports arenas. Well, you know where we have indoor sports arenas? Every block in America. Yeah, they're all at the schools. There's a gym. There's some blacktop or there's some green space. Let's teach us. Why are we spending gazillion dollars on these indoor sports arenas? And then the other thing is I was an old school counselor. When you worry about kids when you're a school counselor? From 3 to 5 p.m. That's when sex, drugs, and rock and roll happens because there's no supervision. So why are we sending our kids home hoping they might make it back to the Boys and Girls Club or the rec center or the travel practice? And it's not a knock on Boys and Girls Clubs, and we got great partnerships and relationships. I'm just saying, what we do is we go into the schools and we train up teachers. We raise money so that we can pay them a really good salary. We try to make like a stipend so that they've been working hard all day. We create a program that's a value add so that they can then deliver that model in their classroom if they want. We help them see how sports is a great place to teach social emotional learning, and kids are safe. Like they haven't left school because now they're there. I mean, people used to always talk about like, what are you going to do after school? Well, we're going to meet up at the playground and we're going to play and stickball, kickball, soccer, it doesn't matter. Let's take, for example, part of what's broken. And I'll, not that anybody would ever tweet at me because I'm not on Twitter anymore. But
another cesspool.
Please. U.S. men's soccer, right? I think that's a perfect example of what's broken. Why are we struggling to beat Panama? Why are we struggling to beat these tiny countries that have so fewer people to draw from? Well, the reason is because, first of all, we're playing way too many refereed games at a young age. Kids are becoming robotic in that sport at 2, they're being told, they're like puppeteers, around, say, you go here, there's no creativity. You talk to Messi and he'll say, I don't know, my body just absorbs the ball. Like, why don't we have players that are like that, right? And I think it's because, first of all, we're not drawing from our entire population. We are drawing from a wealthy to middle class population. And I'll just say it, those kids aren't tough. They're just not. A lot of them aren't. They don't know what it's like to have to sort of work for their next meal. And so, the thing I loved about hoops when I was young was if you win, you stay on, right? Now that doesn't happen. Like, I don't have to earn my next game because mom and dad wrote a check. I get 8 games on a weekend, guaranteed. Hopefully the coach plays me, but I don't have to earn anything in those situations. Where in pickup basketball back in the day, you go down to the park. If you lose, there might be 6 teams waiting to get next. You either go home or you wait, or you make sure you don't lose when you're out there. I just don't think we have that mentality in youth sports. And that's not to say, especially, that's as we climb up the upper developmental, high performance, certainly at the local level, we should be doing all about getting kids as many touches as you want. But I think part of the broken system is back to what you described as the money grab. A lot of people are well-intentioned, but then they get there. They believe us. When we talk to them, they're like, 100% I believe you. Yet they're scheduling kids to play year round, even though their heart tells them it's wrong. Their mind and their money is saying, no, this is my business model. I got to have these kids do this.
Well, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry in our country, and maybe beyond billions here soon with the way that it's going. So 241, you guys talk about putting the play back in sports. What does that mean? Number one, and because then when I think about all I did was play, I think I know where you're going to go with this. But then number two, how do you do that? What's your organizational goals? How do you get involved with people to make that happen?
So, I mean, what we mean by play is just kind of the way we grew up, right? Where it's going to be fun. We're not going to necessarily keep score. There are no winners. There are no losers. We're just going to be creative and have fun. And if, maybe we tweak the rules a little so everyone has a little more success. We have a game of baseball that we do called Rad Ball that's named after one of our coaches, Ryan Radmanovich, who was a
two-time Olympian.
Yeah. And we during COVID, we had to cohort the kids. Instead of them choosing their 3 sports, we had to cohort the kids, and they kind of went through every sport. So he all of a sudden is getting kids in baseball that don't know how to play baseball. They don't know where first base is. And he's like, oh my gosh, I got to rethink this whole thing. So he started this game where they're playing with a tennis racket. They're using like gator balls, so big, soft balls. And, they run the bases, but they can stay on first as long as they want. So if they want to wait for their little friend to get to first, and then the 2 of them can run together to second, then they can do that, right? And not keeping score. So it's just being creative, right? And having games, and we play that Rad Ball game everywhere, and every kid, whether they're in underserved communities or our wealthiest camp, love it, and even if they're baseball kids, they love it. So it's just make it fun, right? Make it fun, because that's why kids quit, because it's a job.
Yeah, I think the other difference is, and Kerry described it, is that Ryan Radmanovich, who's 2-time Canadian Olympian, in and out of the major leagues, he's playing. Like, one of the models we have is that we're not coaches on the sideline barking and being that puppeteer that I was talking about. Coaches and counselors jump right in the games, right? And so they're making sure that there's distribution. The other thing in our trainings is that, often we'll go in, and even, and we see it all the time. You got 24 kids. Next thing you know, coach doesn't know any different. It's 12v12. Like, why are you doing 12v12? And you got kids just chasing the ball. You got kids that are, stepping out. So we turn everything into as small-sided as possible, because we just find that when you can get more kids, first of all, it's the TikTok, YouTube generation too, right? Is that so many kids are afraid to try because they're afraid their failure will show up on somebody's YouTube or their TikTok. And that's more likely to be pronounced in a 12v12 situation because only one can be engaged in the play at that time, means 11 others are watching. You turn that into 2v2, 3v3, you got no choice but to defend or attack. So a lot of the putting play back into sports is just system design, right? It's setting things up so that kids actually have a chance to play. I got an email earlier today. It was a great email from a dad thanking us for the camp experience their kid had. They said they didn't really know what to expect. But they said, you know what, Dad? We were playing the whole day. It didn't matter what it was, but we just were never not playing. And he said the big difference is a lot of times you go to these camps, it's a lot of lectures, right? It's a lot of lines. It's a lot of, stations that are very skill specific. What's the first thing kids say when they come to practice? Are we going to scrimmage today?
Yeah, we scrimmage.
Yeah. And that's code for, are we going to play today?
Yeah.
Or are we just going to do drills? And so I think that's part of what we're trying to get back to is kids just want to play. And if that's what kids want, let's do it. Because if you don't give them what they want, they're going to go to this, right? They're going to go here. They're going to go to the screen because they give them what the kids want, right? They give them the entertainment they want, the visual they want.
Dopamine that they're looking for. Yes.
100%. So if kids are saying, first thing, are we going to scrimmage today? Listen to that. And look, I understand as a coach, like as you climb the ranks, there's other, you got to put your sets in and you got to teach how you're going to break a press and whatever, but you can still gamify that, right? You talked about, Steph Curry's training, his trainer gamified everything because Steph likes to play and he likes to compete. Right.
Yeah.
And so, when we say we don't keep score, kids are keeping score. Right. We're just not, you know what I mean? Yeah. It's just, we're taking the emphasis away. Good for you. You're up 7. Nice job. All right. Let's keep playing. That's the message we're trying to say to kids. It's like, let's cut the nonsense. Are you having fun when you're fighting with your boy about what the score is? No. So let's rock, paper, scissors and move on. And let's keep playing. We just keep harping that word.
I love it. And I think what you just said is so important for coaches to hear, not just in your camp, but in every gym and on every field, in every court in America. If you're coaching kids, you got to figure out how to get them to play. And yes, and I use basketball because that's I'm more in football now with my son, but with basketball, doing that small-sided drill work is critical. And at the collegiate level, we did small-sided drill work probably a quarter of our practice every day of 2-on-2 quarter court, 3-on-3 half court, like tons of that stuff. And being able to take your practice plans, your skill development, your sets, your actions, whatever it is you're running, your press break, and putting those into small-sided games, those are really, really, really critical to the development of the kid too. And if you're a coach and you don't know how to do that, find someone that will help you. Like reach out, like find a good coach in your area and just say, hey, I'm coaching young kids. And one thing about coaches, and I think you agree with this, we want to share any knowledge that we have that can help someone else do a better job with their kids. So reach out, try to get help. Hey, I'm running use offense. I'm running flex. What is a small-sided drill that I can do to work on flex? What's the skill development that I can do to teach this? Reach out and find that and implement that into your practice.
Love it. For sure. You're absolutely right. It doesn't matter the sport. It really doesn't, what you just described.
I mean, I used to start my high school varsity lacrosse practices with a tag game, like something they would have done in elementary school. And they loved, they couldn't wait because they loved it. It was because it got them, instead of running, let's do 3 laps, right? Like, let's just, and in lacrosse, it is, short stints of running that you're doing over a period of time. So they loved it, so and because it brought them back to playing and it wasn't like, I have practice, right? It was, we're going to get to play. So,
yeah. And I think that the thing you're onto it here, because skill development matters if you want it, because if we're trying to develop kids to play at the next level, and that next level might be from 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade to middle school, from middle school to high school, from high school to college, they have to get some skill development done at some level, right? But then they also have to learn how to use those skills within that game that they're going to play, whatever the sport is. And I don't tell very many of my own stories on here, but I went and watched so many practices over the course of my life, evaluating kids, and walking into a gym for like a team's first practice of the year in high school season. And first thing they do is put in their press. And I didn't say this, but I'm like, what the hell are you doing? Like that we don't, no one in college presses unless you're down. And it's like you have to, it's a panic mode, right? That kid's not going to be able to translate to our program. I have to teach them a ton of stuff before they get there. So figuring out how to teach those skill development components are really important, but then understanding what it is that they need to get to that next level. And that next level, I'm not saying the college level, from little kids to the next level.
No, exactly. And the example on the flip side is the third grade coach that's teaching a 1-3-1 half court trap to third graders that or any sort of zone, and the kids have no man-to-man principles, and the only purpose in it is I want to win the game. And so no one's getting better on either side. So
that's right.
I really think, good coach education is like so important. We were thrilled to see that you had Megan Bartlett on the podcast, and she's an old friend of ours who we partner with a lot. And, she's a former college soccer coach herself, but just everything is through a sort of trauma-informed lens, but also a developmental lens, like what's appropriate for that age, not only on the mental side, but also on the physical and skill side, and program for that so that you are thinking towards the future.
So how do people find your camps? Like, are you across the country? Are you regionally? How do people find you?
Well, there's two ways. One is, 241play.org is our website. So we do have camps across the country. I mean, we're Hartford based. In Connecticut, we're in about 10 sites. And then we're in Denver, in Boulder, Colorado. We're outside of Charlotte, North Carolina. We're in Vancouver, Canada. But we went nonprofit in late 2021 because we wanted to move from just a summer camp model, because while we knew we were impacting culture, we weren't sure we were being sticky with kids, right? It's one thing to go for a week or 2 weeks. So we moved towards a model of doing year-round school-based programming. We've actually had a lot of success doing before school, but we do after school as well. And we are actually programming in Kitwe, Zambia, and Nairobi, Kenya as well. Our mantra is pretty much that kids are kids, no matter where you go. They all benefit from play, and that in all settings, sports is the best place to teach self-regulation, leadership development, social emotional skills, because all the emotions happen in real time. Kids get angry, they get anxious, they get distracted, they get sad. All those things could happen in a practice, in a game, certainly in a season. And so if we can use those settings to teach those skills, we have a research-backed, evidence-based way to teach those skills very simply, then we feel like we're having an impact.
Yeah, it was access was a lot of it, that we were realizing that, like we were talking about, if you have the money, you have the access, and that there were so many people literally in our backyard who have no access. They would, if they had $1 million, they'd spend it on, playing a bunch of different sports. And so, we wanted to bring, the joy of sport to them. And so we've been able to sort of marry both things we're doing by providing access. And then for those who have access, teaching them that they don't need to specialize, right? That they can, try multi-sports and still play at a really high level.
I would just add, though, that as a nonprofit, these are trying times, right? So a lot of the funding we had in recent years was post-COVID money, and it was from federal funding. With no Department of Education, it's really difficult to know where those funds are going to land. And so we're struggling from a funding standpoint right now, because historically we were gearing up for 10, 11 schools. Well, now schools we've been in for 3 or 4 years, they're like, we don't know if we have the money to bring you back. That's not good for kids. When you talk about trauma-informed work, kids want consistency. They're going to be like, where's 241? Like, how come I don't have that program this year? And so it's kind of gut-wrenching and heartbreaking in so many ways, because we are so motivated to do this work. So if folks want to bring us to their community, certainly we can always set up fee-for-service camps. That's easy. We do it all the time. We usually just a location and a Pied Piper who likes the concept, and we coach them up on how to deliver it. But then getting us in front of principals, superintendents, district decision makers, usually community partnership people, and figuring out what the funding model can look like, because we got to pay people in order to deliver the program.
How's the best way for people to find you?
I would say,
through your website? Is there a contact
yeah,
form through your website?
if you go to 241play.org, there's an info at 241play.org email right there. There's some contact stuff. We're at 241 Sports on all our social media, so Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. So you can find us in those places as well.
Yep.
Well, I would encourage anybody who's listening to this to reach out, and I think we should have a conversation offline too about some of these things. I'd love to get involved in some way, shape, or form. I really appreciate you guys coming on the show today. Anything that I missed? I know you guys, you have this term you use, top self sports. Before we get to the end here, kind of last topic we cover, to explain that to me.
So TOP stands for thinking on purpose. And in my late 30s, Kerry will attest that I struggled with a panic disorder. So here I was, counselor, coach, young family. I thought I was having health issues. It was a brain issue, right? And it was that I'd used exercise and play to manage my anxiety my whole life, but I had no idea that was the case. So when I stopped exercising and playing so much, my heart rate would elevate. I'd think, oh my God, I'm having a heart attack. Bam, I wind up in the ER. Quick version is I had to learn cognitive behavioral therapy in order for me to be able to manage that. So that's when, fast forward about 10, 12 years, we put together this emoji-based way to help kids identify how they're feeling, because sometimes that's part of the problem. Like, kids can't always differentiate between sadness and anger, right? So helping them know what emotion are you feeling, and then taking them from how they're feeling to how they want to feel. We call that thinking on purpose, TOP, top self. And so what we do is we give them the analogy. What does Steph Curry do right before he takes a foul shot? Well, he takes a deep breath, right? He goes through a routine. That's called self-regulation, right? Calming yourself down. What do football players do before a big game? They're self-regulating, but they're amping themselves up. So we normalize the social emotional piece for kids so that they're not like, oh, that's not brainwashing. That's just like being a good athlete. That's not mindfulness. People get corny around these words. Really what we're doing is we're saying this is as important as the crossover dribble or whether or not you can strike the ball with your left foot. You have to know how to self-regulate, manage your anger so you don't yell at the referee or you don't react to your coach in a negative way. And so when we normalize that, just as a quick kind of warm-up each day, that's what's sticky. That's a game changer in our programs, and it's a real differentiator in what we do.
And I would just add too, we do train the adults, right, to deliver our program. And so, as the kids are identifying their emotions and, working on strategies to help themselves, calm themselves down and get to what we call home base, right? The place where they feel safe and calm. They also now have an adult in their life, right, that they can trust, right? Because, that the adult is also saying, you know what, I'm not feeling great today and I'm your teacher, and so and every child needs an adult other than their parents in their life that they can trust. And I think, we've created that with this program as well.
It's such a good point. And I talk about this all the time with coaches is we want our kids to self-regulate, right? We want them to be, good space when we get to practice. We need to remember as coaches that we bring our shit with us into the gym, onto the field, right? Like, so how do you go from doing whatever it was you were doing that day to making sure you walk in going, I've got a bunch of young people here that need me to be in a good space and not take out whatever I just had happen in my day out on them. So it's good for both sides of that aisle, both coaches and players understand that.
I would start practice some days. If I just had a tough phone call, I'd circle my team up and say, look, guys, I just want to let you know I'm so thrilled to be here because I've had a rough day. I need you today. I need you today. And you'd be remarkable. The kid that is ordinarily sort of self-serving all of a sudden goes to a place of empathy because we've humanized the relationship and they realize, oh yeah, coach can struggle as well. And it just builds up on. The other thing that, only because we're a week out is that, I don't know if we shared this with you earlier, but we got the 241st day of the year declared National Sports Sampling Day. That happens to be next Friday.
Congratulations.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So August 29th, ESPN has recognized us as the multi-sport sort of model in their Take Back Sports campaign. So they're helping to elevate us around that as well. So for what it's worth, I mean, I'm not sure when the pod will air, but August 29th is a day that, we're looking to try to lift up to get people thinking about this concept of sports sampling.
So since I'm part owner of 50% owner of this company that between Jason and I'm going to vote that we do it on August 29th. And so if it doesn't come out on that day, you can blame him. So since he's not on the air here right now, I'm going to throw him under the bus. So really appreciate you guys coming on the show, sharing your knowledge, what your vision is. And we need more good people like you doing this good work. And hopefully this help amplify your message. So I do this with everybody on the show. This comes back from my coaching days. I made my players build themselves a crystal ball for their future. And it involved writing a 5-page paper and all sorts of stuff. I'm not going to make you write a 5-page paper today, I promise. But I do want you to go back in time to your younger selves. And for each of you going through your journey as athletes, helping athletes, kind of what you've gone through organizationally. I'm sure COVID and what you guys were doing was an absolute learning, to be nice, learning experience. What advice would you give to your younger selves knowing everything that you've been through?
Well, it's funny. We were on a recent podcast and I had answered all the questions first. And then he gave a challenge. And when I said, why don't you take this one first? So she's looking at me now like it's your turn. Certainly the thing I've learned about anxiety is that you can control it to some extent. I'm wired anxious. I got some kids that, sometimes Kerry's like to our daughters, like, Dad gave you all the anxiety. Kerry's so chill. So, but even now, I have to remind myself to stop worrying so much. I think if I could go back and like get rid of the cumulative amount of worry and anxiety I had over stuff that just didn't matter. My God, did I learn from it? 100%. Absolutely. Do we have this platform called Top Self that's changing kids' lives as a result? Now I can feel a little bit better about it. But in hindsight, I would have learned to control it sooner and channeled it in ways that were more productive. And so Kerry constantly reminds me of that. We have to live our lives while we're living it. I can't go back to when I'm 13 or 14, but I'm 58. And I don't want to be 78 saying, I wish I could go back to 58. I'm here now. And I gotta just make good choices and really every day appreciate my health, my relationships, the work we're doing, and not be so anxious about stuff all the time.
It's fantastic. Kerry?
I would say thank you. I had a lot of coaches and adults and even teammates that if I could go back in time, I would thank because they did make a huge difference in my life. And at the time I sort of knew that, but I just never, and it didn't have to be in that moment. Like even, I guess now you can kind of look people up and find them again, but I have people who really, really influenced me that, I'm struggling to thank. Yeah. And, thanking people 40 years later isn't necessarily, but I just know as a coach myself, when a kid will come up and say, I love that drill, or, something even like that, or the way that you explain that, or whatever, the little thing really, really, it can make such a difference for me as an adult. And I think when I think of the linesmen who like spear, that story you told about the football, and I think all of us would, if young kids were coming up and saying thank you, for what we do, I wonder if it would sort of dial down some of the adult craziness and be like, wow, this is what it's really about. It's not about whether we won that game or not.
Such an important, I interviewed Miss Val, the former UCLA gymnastics coach, won 7 NCAA championships. And she said the same thing, living with gratitude. And it's really hard to be angry or do anything if you're just walking around with a bunch of gratitude in your heart. And I think it's just people who are accomplished and go back and as you guys are and have built something super cool. When you look back on your lives, you think, God, I could have been more grateful, or I could have worried less. There's all these things that you think about, but then you try to make sure that you just do that going forward, right? Like you can't go back.
No, that's exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just you can't have
live where your
do-overs.
feet are.
You can have restarts though, right? And
Yeah,
so
that's
here
right.
we are. Yeah.
That's right. All right. Well, that was pretty important, but this is the most important part of the show. Everybody's got to tell me a dad joke. And I promise if you don't have one, I won't put you on the spot and make you tell me one if you don't, because I've got a full book of them back here that I can draw from. But if you've got one, I'd love to hear one.
Well, I have a go-to that usually takes a little visual that sometimes people, what did 0 say to 8?
What did 0 say to 8? I don't know.
Nice belt.
Yeah, I had to put the visual in my head.
Exactly. Yeah, you had to picture it. And there's people listening or watching right now that are like, I don't get it. I don't get it.
Draw it. It'll work out great. Well, thank you guys so much for coming on the show. I appreciate the work that you're doing, and for people out there that that this resonates with, go find these people and see if there's some way to get involved with what they're doing. It is at what we believe here, the core of what's important to young people in their lives, and having people like you committed to this on a daily basis is super cool.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
You bet. Just finished up my conversation with the Boyles from 241 Sports, and really impressed by the impact that they've had over 32 years of developing this program that they've put together. And some of the key things that they talked about that I really, really want to touch on here is playing sports should be fun. Number one priority for young people is that they have fun with that ball, with that racket, with that bat, whatever it is that they're doing, that they have fun with that. And that is what is going to bring them back and continually drive them to come back to your gym, back to your court, back to your field. And as coaches, trying to figure out a way to incorporate fun into our team's practices, that it doesn't become a job for an 8 or 9 or 10-year-old high school kid to come to practice. Yes, as you go up in level, there's got to be more of a commitment to winning, and that's a key component to what you're doing. But remembering at all times, and especially at a young age, make sure your kids have fun. We also talked about being multi-sport athlete. You've heard me talk about this a lot. I believe in it deeply, and the cross training that can happen from playing multiple sports is critical. And a conversation I had recently as well with Trevor Hoffman, Major League Baseball player, talking about how important all of those different sports are to not only the development of all of your fundamentals as a player, but to the sport that you're playing. There's so many crossovers from playing basketball, playing football, playing baseball, running track, playing soccer. There are so many translatable skills to the sport that's your primary sport that you miss out on if you only play one sport. Also, adults lead the way. When we walk in our gyms, when we walk on our fields, have fun with your kids. Hop into a drill with them, play with them. If you're coaching a basketball team and you had a tough game and you come to practice the next day and your kids think, oh no, coach is going to play wiffle ball. Hop in and have fun with them, and you be the pitcher. You get up there and let them pitch to you. Do something to have fun with your kids, and you lead the way and have them see you having fun. That is an authentic way to build connection with your players and keep them wanting to come back. And then what they're trying to do is so important in what I believe is a broken youth sports system, is to provide access to all. And I don't know how to do this. If I did, I'd figure it out. And there's people working on this, but figuring out how to make sure every single kid in our country has the ability to be a part of sports. there are so many translatable skills that lead to success later on in life. And there, I don't want to get wrong this quote, but especially on the women's side, it's in the 90 percentage of people in the C-suite at least played a high school sport. So think about that. From what opportunities come from being in those gyms, on those fields, on those courts. It is something that we have to figure out a way to give access to everybody so that we are more competitive in all the sports that we're playing internationally. But more importantly, is to provide young people, as many young people, with the lessons that they can learn from these great games that we all get to play. Again, thanks to the Boyles for coming on the show. I really enjoyed it. Support them if you want to reach out and find out how to be a part of their nonprofit. They're easy to find at their website, 241sports.org. And then if you like what we're doing, I say this all the time, please share it with your friends. Go on wherever you're watching or listening to this podcast, like us, rate us, and let people know that you like what we're doing here. Until next time, have a great day.